You think Thanksgiving in the 1960s meant tables groaning under golden turkeys and endless side dishes? Think again. During this decade of economic uncertainty and family budgets stretched thin, resourceful home cooks turned to creativity, thrift, and ingenuity to create holiday feasts that cost almost nothing yet satisfied everyone at the table. Mock turkey loaf was the centerpiece that saved Thanksgiving when whole birds cost too much for struggling families. Ground beef mixed with breadcrumbs, onions, celery, and poultry seasoning was shaped into a loaf that looked remarkably like sliced turkey when carved. The mixture was packed into bread pans, baked until golden, and served with gravy. The result was surprisingly convincing, with breadcrumbs creating texture that mimicked turkey while sage gave holiday flavor. Mothers prepared these loaves the night before, allowing them to chill for easier slicing. Children couldn't tell the difference when smothered in gravy, and adults appreciated stretching 2 pounds of beef into meals feeding 8 people. The loaf represented dignity during hardship, allowing families to gather around something resembling celebration. Cookbooks from 1963 featured multiple versions. Depression dressing carried its name from the 1930s into 1960s kitchens where thrift remained essential for family survival. Day-old bread torn into chunks was mixed with diced onions, celery leaves that would otherwise be discarded, and just enough broth to moisten without making it soggy. The mixture contained no butter, no eggs, no expensive herbs beyond a pinch of dried sage saved from last year's garden. It was spread in shallow pans and baked until the top formed a golden crust while the interior stayed soft and savory, absorbing gravy beautifully. The dressing transformed humble bread into something that felt substantial and comforting on holiday tables. 6 slices of stale bread became enough dressing for 10 people when stretched with vegetables and liquid. The technique required attention, checking frequently to prevent burning while ensuring enough crispness developed. Home economists praised depression dressing as smart homemaking, teaching young wives how their grandmothers had survived harder times. Water gravy transformed basic ingredients into sauce that made dry meat and plain dressing taste like abundance for budget-conscious families. The technique started with whatever fat was available, usually bacon grease or meat drippings, heated in cast iron until shimmering and ready. Flour was whisked in slowly, creating a roux that cooked until golden and nutty smelling, the foundation of all good gravy. Then came water, added gradually while stirring constantly to prevent lumps from forming, along with salt, pepper, and sometimes a splash of kitchen bouquet for deeper color and flavor. The gravy simmered until it thickened enough to coat the back of a spoon, becoming smooth and rich despite containing no stock, no wine, no cream. Families poured it generously over everything on their plates, the hot sauce bringing moisture and flavor to economical foods that needed help. Cookbook authors acknowledged that while broth made better gravy, water gravy kept families fed when resources ran low during difficult times. Carrot and raisin salad brought color and sweetness to Thanksgiving tables without requiring expensive ingredients or complicated preparation that strained budgets. Carrots were peeled and grated by hand using box graters, creating thin shreds that mixed easily with plump raisins that had been soaked briefly in warm water to soften them. The dressing was simply mayonnaise, thinned with a little vinegar and sugar, coating the carrots until they glistened orange and inviting in serving bowls. Some cooks added shredded cabbage to stretch the salad further, while others included chopped celery for additional crunch and volume. The result was sweet, tangy, and refreshing, providing textural contrast to heavier holiday foods while adding vitamins that struggling families needed. Children particularly loved this salad because the raisins offered little bursts of candy-like sweetness hidden among the vegetables. A pound of carrots and small box of raisins created enough salad for 12 people. Pumpkin soup from canned pumpkin gave families an elegant first course that cost almost nothing, yet impressed guests with its golden color and smooth, velvety texture. A single can of pumpkin puree was thinned with milk or water, seasoned generously with salt, pepper, and a pinch of nutmeg, then heated slowly while stirring constantly to prevent scorching on the bottom. The soup was poured into bowls and served warm, sometimes garnished with a sprinkle of dried parsley saved from summer gardens. The flavor was earthy and mildly sweet, preparing palates for the heavier foods to follow while providing warmth and nourishment on cold November afternoons. Home economists promoted this soup as sophisticated entertaining on a budget, showing housewives that they could serve multiple courses without spending beyond their means. The canned pumpkin that cost 35 cents stretched into soup for 8 people when properly diluted and seasoned, making it remarkably economical for struggling families. Mashed potato casserole turned yesterday's leftovers into tomorrow's Thanksgiving side dish, embodying the waste-nothing philosophy that governed 1960s kitchens and family budgets. Cold mashed potatoes were mixed with a beaten egg to bind them together, spread evenly in a buttered baking dish, and topped with breadcrumbs made from dried bread crust that had been saved throughout the week. The casserole baked until the top turned golden and crispy, while the potatoes underneath stayed creamy and smooth, creating textural contrast that made it more interesting than plain mashed potatoes served fresh. Some cooks added diced onions or grated cheese when available, but the basic version required only potatoes, egg, and crumbs to create something worthy of holiday tables. The dish stretched limited resources by making day-old potatoes feel new and special rather than boring leftovers. Families prepared it the morning of Thanksgiving and baked it while the main dishes cooked, saving precious time and oven space. Green bean vinaigrette replaced expensive green bean casserole on budget-conscious Thanksgiving tables, using simple garden vegetables and pantry staples instead of costly cream and canned soup that strained budgets. Fresh or canned green beans were drained thoroughly and arranged attractively in serving dishes, then dressed generously with a mixture of vinegar, sugar, and salad oil, whisked together with salt and pepper until well blended. Thinly sliced onions were scattered over the top, their sharp flavor mellowing slightly in the acidic dressing as it sat. The result was bright, tangy, and refreshing, cutting through the richness of heavier holiday foods while providing vegetables that families needed for balanced nutrition. The dish could be served cold or at room temperature, eliminating the need for precious oven space or last-minute preparation during the busy holiday cooking rush. A pound of beans dressed with a quarter cup of vinaigrette fed 8 to 10 people as a substantial side dish. Cranberry fluff stretched expensive fresh cranberries into a colorful dessert salad that fed crowds while costing only pennies per serving for 1960s Thanksgiving celebrations. A small package of fresh cranberries was ground through a hand-crank meat grinder along with one whole orange peel and all, creating a tart, chunky mixture that was both bright and flavorful. This base was sweetened generously with sugar and mixed thoroughly with miniature marshmallows that had been purchased on sale after Halloween, along with whatever canned fruit happened to be cheapest at the grocery store that week. The mixture was folded together gently and chilled overnight in the refrigerator, allowing the flavors to meld together while the marshmallows softened into the cranberry mixture, creating a fluffy, cloud-like texture. The result was sweet, tart, and fluffy all at once, with little bursts of fruit throughout and enough vibrant color to make it look festive and special on holiday tables. Biscuit rolls replaced expensive yeast rolls on Thanksgiving tables, using quick biscuit dough shaped into elegant crescents that looked festive and special despite costing almost nothing to prepare. Flour, baking powder, salt, and lard were cut together with a pastry blender until the mixture resembled coarse crumbs. Then just enough milk was added to form soft dough that could be rolled out thin on floured kitchen counters. The dough was cut carefully into triangles, rolled up tightly from the wide end toward the point, and curved gently into crescent shapes before being placed on baking sheets and baked until golden brown and puffed. The rolls emerged from the oven hot and flaky, their buttery layers pulling apart easily when broken open at the table, steam rising from the soft interior. Families brushed them immediately with melted margarine while still warm, creating an attractive shine and adding richness that made them look more expensive than they actually were. Sweet potato pudding transformed the year's cheapest and most abundant vegetable into Thanksgiving dessert that satisfied sweet cravings without requiring expensive sugar or fancy ingredients that strained family budgets. Boiled sweet potatoes were mashed until completely smooth and mixed thoroughly with beaten eggs, a small amount of sugar or molasses for sweetness, ground cinnamon for warmth, and enough milk to create a pudding consistency that would set properly when baked. The mixture was poured carefully into buttered baking dishes and baked in moderate ovens until set firm and lightly browned on top, filling kitchens throughout the neighborhood with the spicy sweetness of cinnamon and caramelizing sugars. The pudding could be served warm, straight from the oven, or cooled and served cold the next day, either plain or topped with a small dollop of whipped cream if the budget allowed such luxury. Sweet potatoes cost only pennies per pound in the 1960s markets. Cornstarch pudding gave families an economical dessert alternative when eggs and milk for custard cost more than budgets allowed during lean Thanksgiving seasons. Cornstarch was mixed with sugar, a pinch of salt, and whatever flavoring was available, vanilla extract if affordable, or simply cinnamon and nutmeg from the spice cabinet. Cold milk was stirred in gradually to prevent lumps. Then the mixture was cooked slowly on the stovetop, stirring constantly until it thickened into smooth, creamy pudding that coated the spoon. The pudding was poured into individual serving dishes and chilled until set, sometimes topped with a sprinkle of cinnamon or a few raisins for decoration. The texture was surprisingly luxurious despite humble ingredients, smooth and rich on the tongue. A single box of cornstarch costing 15 cents could make enough pudding to serve 8 people as dessert, making it one of the most economical sweet endings possible. Cabbage slaw with boiled dressing provided crisp, tangy freshness on Thanksgiving tables when lettuce was expensive or unavailable during November's cold weather months. A head of cabbage was shredded finely by hand using sharp knives or box graters, creating thin strips that filled large bowls generously. The boiled dressing was made by cooking together vinegar, sugar, a beaten egg, and a little flour until thickened and smooth, then cooling it before tossing with the raw cabbage. Some cooks added grated carrots or chopped apples when available, stretching the slaw further while adding color and nutrition. The result was crunchy, sweet-sour, and refreshing, providing textural contrast to soft, rich holiday foods. A single head of cabbage cost less than 20 cents and made enough slaw to feed 12 people when dressed properly. The boiled dressing used less oil than mayonnaise-based versions, saving money while still providing creamy coating. Oatmeal bread stretched expensive wheat flour by mixing in rolled oats that cost far less per pound but still provided substance and nutrition for growing families. The bread dough was made by combining flour, oats that had been softened in boiling water, yeast, salt, a small amount of sugar, and whatever fat was available, lard, margarine, or butter depending on the budget. The dough was kneaded until smooth and elastic, left to rise in warm places until doubled, then shaped into loaves and baked until golden brown with hollow-sounding bottoms. The finished bread had a heartier texture than plain white bread, with visible oats throughout and a slightly nutty flavor that made it seem more substantial and filling. Slices held up well to butter and jam or gravy soaking, making it practical for Thanksgiving tables where bread served multiple purposes. 2 loaves of oatmeal bread cost less than 50 cents to make and fed a family through the entire holiday weekend when sliced thick. Gelatin vegetable salad turned a packet of flavored gelatin into an elegant-looking side dish that impressed guests while costing almost nothing to prepare for holiday gatherings. Lime or lemon gelatin was dissolved in boiling water, then cold water was added along with finely diced vegetables, usually cabbage, carrots, and celery chopped by hand into tiny pieces. The mixture was poured into decorative molds or simple glass dishes and chilled overnight until set firm and jiggly. The finished salad was unmolded onto lettuce leaves if available, or simply served in squares cut from the pan. The bright green or yellow color made it look festive and special on Thanksgiving tables, and the sweet tart gelatin flavor contrasted interestingly with crunchy vegetables suspended throughout. A single package of gelatin costing 10 cents could be stretched with vegetables to serve 8 people. Children particularly enjoyed the jiggly texture, making this an easy way to get them to eat vegetables they might otherwise refuse. Mock pecan pie gave families the appearance and nearly the taste of expensive pecan pie by substituting oats for costly nuts that could run $1 or more per pound during the 1960s. The pie filling was made from brown sugar, corn syrup, butter, eggs, and rolled oats that had been toasted in a dry skillet until golden and fragrant to deepen their flavor. The mixture was poured into an unbaked pie crust and baked slowly until the filling set firm, but still had a slight wobble in the center, just like real pecan pie. The toasted oats provided the crunchy texture and slightly nutty flavor that mimicked pecans remarkably well when the pie was sliced and served. Families could make this pie for under 35 cents total, while a real pecan pie using actual nuts would have cost 3 or 4 times as much. Guests often couldn't tell the difference when served warm with whipped topping, and children never suspected the substitution at all. Bread and butter pickles from summer canning added tangy sweetness to Thanksgiving plates, representing the preserved abundance of warmer months brought forward to winter holidays when fresh vegetables were scarce. The pickles had been made in August when cucumbers flooded gardens faster than families could eat them fresh, sliced thin with onions and packed into jars with a spiced vinegar syrup sweetened with sugar. By November, the pickles had mellowed and developed complex flavor, the sharp vinegar softened by the sugar while cucumbers stayed crisp and refreshing. A single jar opened at Thanksgiving provided enough pickles to garnish every plate at the table, their bright yellow color adding visual appeal alongside the browns and oranges of traditional holiday foods. The sweet-sour flavor cut through rich gravies and fatty meats, refreshing the palate between bites. For families who had put up dozens of jars during summer, these pickles represented essentially free food. Rice pudding transformed leftover rice into creamy Thanksgiving dessert that satisfied sweet cravings while using up yesterday's side dish that might otherwise have been thrown away. Cold cooked rice was combined with milk, sugar, a beaten egg to bind it together, vanilla extract if available, and a generous sprinkle of cinnamon or nutmeg for warmth and spice. The mixture was baked slowly in a buttered dish until the custard set and the top turned golden brown, filling the kitchen with the sweet scent of cinnamon and caramelizing milk sugars. Some cooks added raisins or chopped apples when available, stretching the pudding further while adding texture and additional sweetness. The finished pudding could be served warm from the oven or chilled overnight and served cold the next day, making it versatile for holiday meal planning. 2 cups of leftover rice could be transformed into dessert, serving 6 to 8 people, making this an economical way to avoid waste while providing something sweet to end the holiday meal. Creamed onions turned the cheapest vegetable in the store into a side dish that looked and tasted elegant enough for special occasion tables during Thanksgiving celebrations. Small white onions were peeled carefully to keep them whole, then boiled in salted water until just tender, but not mushy, maintaining their shape and mild sweetness. Meanwhile, a simple white sauce was made by melting butter, stirring in flour until smooth, then gradually adding milk while whisking constantly to prevent lumps from forming. The drained onions were folded gently into the cream sauce and seasoned with salt, white pepper, and sometimes a pinch of nutmeg for depth. The dish was served hot in attractive serving bowls, the white onions glistening in their creamy sauce looking far more expensive than they actually were. A bag of onions costing 20 cents could feed 10 people when prepared this way, making creamed onions one of the most economical yet impressive-looking sides possible. Molasses cookies provided homemade sweet treats to end Thanksgiving meals when expensive pies required too much butter, eggs, and sugar for stretched family budgets. The cookies were made by creaming together lard or shortening with molasses and just enough sugar to balance the molasses' strong flavor, then adding flour, baking soda, and warm spices like ginger, cinnamon, and cloves. The dough was rolled into balls, pressed flat with the bottom of a glass dipped in sugar, and baked until the edges set firm, but the centers stayed soft and chewy. The finished cookies were dark brown, spicy, and deeply flavorful, with a chewy texture that made them satisfying despite their small size. Molasses was cheap compared to refined sugar, making these cookies economical to produce in large batches. A single batch using 1 cup of molasses yielded 3 dozen cookies, enough to serve with coffee after the holiday meal. Scalloped corn transformed canned corn into a rich, custardy side dish that seemed far more luxurious than its humble ingredients would suggest to hungry holiday dinner guests. The corn was drained and mixed with beaten eggs, milk, crushed saltine crackers, melted butter, and seasonings including salt, pepper, and sometimes a pinch of sugar to enhance the corn's natural sweetness. The mixture was poured into a buttered baking dish and baked slowly until the custard set firm and the top turned golden brown, creating a dish that was both creamy and substantial. The crackers added texture and helped stretch the expensive eggs and milk, making the dish more economical while still delivering rich flavor. A single can of corn, costing 15 cents, could be transformed into a casserole, serving 6 people when extended with crackers and dairy. Scalloped corn appeared regularly in church cookbooks throughout the 1960s. Apple brown. Betty transformed day-old bread and the cheapest apples available into a warm, comforting dessert that satisfied sweet cravings without requiring expensive pie crusts or fancy ingredients. Stale bread was torn into chunks or cubed, then layered in a buttered baking dish with sliced apples that had been tossed with cinnamon, sugar, and a squeeze of lemon juice if available. More bread pieces were scattered on top, dotted with small pieces of butter. Then the whole dish was baked until the apples softened and released their juices, which soaked into the bread, creating a pudding-like texture. The top layer of bread turned golden and crispy, providing textural contrast to the soft, spiced apples underneath. The dessert could be served warm or cold, plain or topped with a splash of cream if the budget allowed such luxury. 3 or 4 apples and half a loaf of stale bread could be transformed into dessert serving 6 to 8 people, making this one of the most economical sweet endings for holiday meals. Buttered turnips brought a humble root vegetable to Thanksgiving tables, proving that even the plainest foods could be made appealing with proper preparation and a little butter for richness. Fresh turnips were peeled and cut into chunks, then boiled in salted water until fork tender but not mushy, their slight bitterness mellowing during cooking. The turnips were drained thoroughly and mashed roughly with a fork, leaving some texture rather than making them completely smooth. Then a small amount of butter was stirred in along with salt and pepper for seasoning. The result was creamy, slightly sweet, and surprisingly mild, without the strong turnip flavor that many people found off-putting. Turnips cost only pennies per pound, making them one of the most economical vegetables available, and a single large turnip could feed 6 people when mashed and buttered. This dish taught young homemakers that even unpopular vegetables could be made palatable when cooked properly. Bread pudding represented the ultimate waste-nothing dessert, transforming stale bread that might otherwise be thrown away into something sweet, comforting, and deeply satisfying for Thanksgiving celebrations. Old bread was torn into pieces and soaked in a mixture of milk, beaten eggs, sugar, vanilla extract if available, and warm spices like cinnamon and nutmeg until completely saturated. The soggy bread mixture was poured into a buttered baking dish and baked slowly until the custard set and the top turned golden brown with slightly crispy edges. Some cooks added raisins when they were on sale, or chopped apples from the fall harvest, stretching the pudding further while adding texture and natural sweetness. The finished pudding was served warm, sometimes with a simple vanilla sauce made from sugar, butter, and milk cooked together until smooth. Half a loaf of stale bread could be transformed into dessert serving 8 people, making this one of the most economical sweet endings possible. Boiled potatoes with parsley provided the simplest possible side dish for Thanksgiving tables when budgets couldn't stretch to include more elaborate potato preparations that required butter, milk, or cheese. Potatoes were scrubbed clean but left unpeeled to save time and preserve nutrients, then boiled in heavily salted water until fork tender but not falling apart. The potatoes were drained and returned to the hot pot briefly to steam off excess moisture, then transferred to a serving bowl and sprinkled with chopped parsley that had been dried from summer gardens. The dish was humble but filling, letting the natural flavor of good potatoes shine through without interference from rich ingredients. Potatoes remained one of the cheapest foods available throughout the 1960s, and 5 pounds of potatoes could feed 12 people when boiled whole. This preparation taught that not every dish needed to be fancy to have a place on holiday tables. Vinegar coleslaw bypassed expensive mayonnaise by using a simple vinegar-based dressing that was tangy, refreshing, and kept perfectly without refrigeration during long holiday dinners. Cabbage was shredded finely and combined with grated carrots for color, then dressed with a mixture of vinegar, sugar, salt, and celery seeds stirred together until the sugar dissolved completely. The slaw was mixed thoroughly and left to sit for at least an hour, allowing the vegetables to soften slightly and release their juices, which mingled with the dressing to create a light, flavorful coating. The result was crisp, tangy, and sweet all at once, providing refreshing contrast to rich holiday foods without adding heaviness. A head of cabbage costing 15 cents could make enough slaw to serve a dozen people when shredded fine and dressed properly. The vinegar dressing meant the slaw actually improved as it sat, making it perfect for preparing ahead during busy holiday cooking schedules. Canned fruit cocktail provided colorful, sweet fruit on Thanksgiving tables when fresh fruit was either unavailable or too expensive for families managing tight grocery budgets during holiday seasons. The cans contained a mixture of peaches, pears, grapes, and cherries packed in sweet syrup that made them feel festive and special despite their industrial origins. The fruit was simply opened, drained of most of its syrup to avoid overwhelming sweetness, and spooned into small serving dishes or glass bowls to show off the bright colors. Some families served it as a first course before the main meal, while others offered it as a light dessert alternative for those who found pie too heavy. Children particularly loved fruit cocktail because of the bright red maraschino cherry hidden at the bottom of each serving, which they saved for last like a prize. A single large can costing 35 cents could serve 6 to 8 people. Gravy made from bouillon cubes gave families rich, flavorful sauce when meat drippings were insufficient or non-existent, proving that even basic ingredients could create satisfaction when handled properly. Butter or margarine was melted in a saucepan. Flour was stirred in to create a roux. Then hot water was added gradually while whisking constantly, along with crumbled chicken or beef bouillon cubes for concentrated meaty flavor. The gravy was seasoned with salt and pepper, simmered until it thickened to the desired consistency, and served hot over everything on the plate. While not quite as rich as gravy made from actual meat drippings, the bouillon version was remarkably satisfying and fooled most dinner guests who never suspected the economical shortcut. A jar of bouillon cubes costing less than $1 could make dozens of batches of gravy throughout the holiday season, making this extremely economical for adding moisture and flavor. Cottage cheese and pineapple salad combined 2 economical ingredients into a sweet, savory side dish that looked elegant enough for company yet cost almost nothing to prepare for holiday gatherings. Cottage cheese was spooned into individual serving dishes or onto lettuce leaves arranged on plates, then topped with canned pineapple rings or chunks that had been drained of their heavy syrup. Sometimes a maraschino cherry was added to the center of each pineapple ring for extra color and festivity, making the simple dish look more impressive and special. The combination of creamy, tangy cottage cheese with sweet, tropical pineapple created an interesting flavor contrast that refreshed the palate between bites of heavier foods. Cottage cheese remained one of the cheapest protein sources available throughout the 1960s, and a single container combined with 1 can of pineapple could serve 8 to 10 people as a side salad. Baked acorn squash with brown sugar transformed a humble winter vegetable into a side dish that looked and tasted special enough for holiday tables without requiring expensive or complicated ingredients. The squash was cut in half lengthwise. Seeds were scooped out and discarded. Then each half was placed cut side up in a baking pan with a small amount of water in the bottom. A spoonful of brown sugar and a tiny pat of butter were placed in the cavity of each half. Then the whole pan was covered with foil and baked until the squash flesh became tender enough to scoop out easily. The brown sugar melted and caramelized slightly during baking, creating a sweet glaze that complemented the squash's natural mild flavor perfectly. 1 medium squash cut in half could serve 2 people generously, and squash cost only 20 to 30 cents each, making this an economical way to include vegetables on holiday menus. Applesauce cake provided moist, spiced dessert that stayed fresh for days while requiring less butter, eggs, and sugar than traditional cakes, making it perfect for budget-conscious Thanksgiving celebrations. The cake batter was made by creaming together shortening with sugar, adding applesauce for moisture and natural sweetness, then folding in flour, baking soda, cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves until just combined. Raisins or chopped walnuts could be added when available, but the cake was delicious even without these additions, relying on warm spices for flavor complexity. The batter was poured into a greased pan, and baked until a toothpick inserted in the center came out clean, filling the kitchen with the scent of cinnamon and apples. The finished cake was moist, dark, and richly spiced, needing no frosting to be satisfying. A jar of applesauce could be transformed into a cake serving 12 people, making this one of the most economical desserts possible. Raisin rice. Pilaf proved that a meatless dinner could still feel special and satisfying when handled with care. White rice was simmered slowly with a bit of butter until each grain was tender, then tossed with plump raisins that had been soaked in warm water to bring out their natural sweetness. A pinch of cinnamon or nutmeg added gentle spice, turning plain rice into a fragrant dish that filled the kitchen with an inviting aroma. Many 1960s households served this pilaf as a main course on nights when meat was too expensive, or saved it for church suppers where a simple vegetarian option was welcome. It paired beautifully with a crisp green salad or a side of baked apples, creating a balanced meal from inexpensive ingredients. Leftovers reheated well for breakfast with a drizzle of honey or a splash of milk. The dish showed how a few pantry staples could stretch a grocery budget and proved that even the simplest ingredients could deliver comfort and a hint of elegance at the dinner table. Bacon-wrapped dates were a quick and flavorful appetizer combining smoky, salty bacon with sweet, chewy dates. This simple yet indulgent dish provided a delightful contrast in taste and texture that made it a popular choice for parties and casual gatherings during the mid-century era. The recipe required minimal ingredients and little time, making it accessible to home cooks looking to impress guests without elaborate preparations. Bacon-wrapped dates reflected a trend toward finger foods that offered both richness and a hint of exotic sweetness, appealing to evolving palates. The dish also showcased the inventive use of contrasting flavors typical of the period's culinary experimentation. Its ease of preparation and crowd-pleasing nature helped cement its place on appetizer menus and family celebrations alike. Bacon-wrapped dates remain a beloved classic that represents mid-20th century America's knack for combining simple ingredients into memorable bites. Cheese and pineapple skewers were a cheerful, bite-sized appetizer that embodied the playful spirit of 1960s entertaining. Cubes of sharp cheddar cheese alternated with sweet pineapple chunks threaded onto toothpicks or cocktail sticks, creating an attractive and easy-to-eat party snack. The contrasting flavors of salty, savory cheese with juicy tropical pineapple made for a pleasing combination that delighted guests at cocktail parties, potlucks, and family gatherings. These skewers required no cooking and minimal preparation, allowing hosts to quickly assemble a tasty and visually appealing dish. This simple recipe reflected the era's fondness for finger foods that combined convenience with a touch of sophistication. Though the popularity of pineapple in savory dishes has waned, cheese and pineapple skewers remain a nostalgic symbol of mid-century Americana and its inventive yet accessible approach to casual entertaining. Split pea soup with ham bone was a thrifty cook's dream, transforming simple dried peas and leftover ham trimmings into a thick, flavorful meal. The ham bone, often saved from a previous roast, was simmered slowly with split peas, onions, carrots, and celery until the peas broke down into a velvety texture. The marrow and scraps from the bone infused the soup with a deep, smoky richness without requiring additional meat. This was a dish that could simmer on the stove all afternoon, filling the home with a comforting aroma that promised warmth and satisfaction. Inexpensive, nourishing, and filling, split pea soup could feed a family for pennies a bowl. It was perfect for cold winter days when something hearty was needed to chase away the chill. Leftovers thickened overnight, making the next day's serving even richer in flavor. Some cooks served it with a slice of buttered bread or cornbread for dipping, completing the meal without adding much cost. In an era when resourcefulness in the kitchen was essential, split pea soup with ham bone was a shining example of how to make the most of every scrap while delivering deep, soulful comfort in every spoonful. Cabbage and noodles was a meal that had already been a staple for Eastern European immigrants, but in the 1950s, it worked its way into the broader American kitchen as a cheap yet filling dinner. The ingredients were basic: boiled egg noodles tossed with sautéed cabbage, butter, and sometimes a sprinkling of breadcrumbs for crunch. Meat was not required. but families would occasionally add bacon drippings or ham scraps for extra flavor. It was one of those dinners where the aroma of frying cabbage was enough to remind people of their parents' or grandparents' kitchens. The dish was hearty but never heavy, and it could feed a family of 4 with little effort. Because both cabbage and noodles were inexpensive and available everywhere, it became a reliable fallback meal for households watching their budgets. Many children grew up eating this on cold nights when there was little else in the pantry. Though rarely served today, it carried the warmth of immigrant tradition and the ingenuity of families making every penny count. Green bean croquettes brought new life to leftover vegetables, turning them into crispy patties that satisfied even the pickiest eaters. Cooked green beans were mashed with breadcrumbs, a beaten egg, and a sprinkle of herbs, then shaped into small rounds and pan-fried until golden on the outside and soft within. This dish allowed thrifty homemakers to stretch a handful of beans into a full meal, pairing perfectly with a dollop of ketchup or a simple white sauce. Children loved the crunch, and parents appreciated the low cost and quick preparation time. Green bean croquettes also demonstrated the growing influence of European cooking techniques in American kitchens, where frying and breadcrumb coatings were becoming increasingly popular. Served alongside a salad or a scoop of mashed potatoes, they brought variety and texture to the dinner table without adding strain to the grocery budget. Their lasting charm lies in the way they prove that even the simplest leftovers can be turned into something special when treated with care and creativity. The peanut butter and banana sandwich was a sweet and savory classic that found a special place in many mid-century American homes. This simple creation combined creamy or crunchy peanut butter with fresh banana slices layered between 2 pieces of soft bread, creating a quick, satisfying meal or snack. Its appeal rested on the harmonious blend of the nutty richness from the peanut butter and the natural sweetness and creaminess of the banana. The sandwich was easy to prepare, required no cooking, and could be made in minutes, which made it ideal for busy families or children's lunches. It also offered a nutritious boost, providing protein, healthy fats, and potassium. Over time, this sandwich became a nostalgic comfort food for many, evoking memories of childhood and family kitchens. Its simplicity did not diminish its popularity, as it balanced taste and health better than many other snacks of the era. The peanut butter and banana sandwich exemplifies how basic ingredients combined thoughtfully can produce a timeless favorite that crosses generations. Quick cranberry and orange relish was a vibrant and tangy cold-side dish that gained popularity in the 1960s for holiday meals and casual dinners alike. This recipe mixed fresh or canned cranberries with grated orange zest and sugar, sometimes adding chopped nuts for crunch, all combined into a zesty relish served chilled. Its bright colors and lively flavors offered a refreshing contrast to rich main dishes such as roasted turkey or ham. The relish was easy to prepare, requiring little more than mixing and chilling, making it an ideal 10-minute recipe for busy cooks. It captured the decade's preference for quick, flavorful condiments that added zest and variety to traditional meals. Though cranberry sauce remains popular, this quick cranberry and orange relish stands out as a nostalgic alternative that embodies mid-century America's inventive take on holiday sides and fresh fruit dishes. Eggplant parmesan casserole brought a touch of Italian-inspired comfort to the frugal dinner table, making use of the abundant and inexpensive eggplant that was widely available in grocery stores and gardens. Slices of eggplant were dredged in breadcrumbs, sometimes homemade from stale bread, and baked or pan-fried until tender. These slices were layered in a casserole dish with marinara sauce and cheese, then baked until bubbly and golden on top. The eggplant's mild, creamy texture absorbed the flavors of the sauce, giving the dish richness without the need for costly meat. For those watching their spending, this casserole was a way to create a hearty, crowd-worthy meal that felt indulgent yet cost very little. Leftovers reheated beautifully, making it perfect for meal planning. Some home cooks added extra vegetables like spinach or zucchini between the layers, stretching the recipe even further. Paired with a side of pasta or crusty bread, eggplant parmesan casserole was both filling and satisfying, offering all the comfort of a traditional Italian dinner at a fraction of the price. It stood as proof that vegetables could take center stage in a main dish without sacrificing flavor, heartiness, or the joy of gathering around the table. Milk toast may sound too simple to be a dinner, but in the 1950s it was still a comforting staple, especially for children and the elderly. The dish was made by pouring warm milk over buttered toast and sprinkling it lightly with sugar or cinnamon. It was soft, mild, and easy to digest, which made it especially popular in homes where money was tight or illness-limited diets. Parents often made it as a quick supper when little else was available. Despite its plain appearance, milk toast carried an emotional weight because it was associated with care and comfort. Children saw it as a treat, while adults saw it as a reminder of leaner years when even simple foods mattered. The combination of warm milk and crisp toast provided both nourishment and reassurance. Though it has largely disappeared from modern kitchens, in the 1950s it was beloved as a gentle and familiar meal that everyone could afford. Stuffed tomato boats floated right into many mid-century cookbooks as a budget-friendly way to transform fresh produce into a satisfying dinner. Large tomatoes were carefully hollowed and filled with a mixture of cooked rice, finely chopped celery, onion, and a light drizzle of mayonnaise dressing for moisture. Sometimes a sprinkle of paprika or a handful of breadcrumbs was added on top for color and texture. This simple combination delivered a surprising amount of flavor and a pleasing balance between the juicy tomato walls and the warm rice filling. Home cooks appreciated how the recipe allowed them to use leftover rice and vegetables, reducing waste while creating something pretty enough for company. In summer months, when gardens overflowed with ripe tomatoes, these stuffed boats provided a refreshing alternative to heavier casseroles. They were served chilled for a cool supper or lightly baked when the weather turned cold, proving their versatility across the seasons. Their bright presentation made them a standout dish for picnics, church potlucks, or a light Friday night family meal. Crispy potato pancakes were a beloved pan-fried dish made from grated potatoes, cherished for their golden crunch and comforting flavor. Perfect for breakfast or dinner, these pancakes used simple ingredients like shredded potatoes, eggs, and flour to bind them before frying in oil or butter. The recipe's appeal lay in its quick preparation and the satisfying contrast of a crisp exterior with a tender interior. Mid-20th century families often turned to potato pancakes as an economical way to stretch ingredients while delivering hearty, flavorful meals. The dish was popular in both rural and urban kitchens, often served with sour cream, applesauce, or gravy. Crispy potato pancakes embodied the era's emphasis on practical, filling food that could be made easily with pantry staples. Their enduring popularity speaks to the timeless appeal of simple, well-executed comfort food that warms both body and soul. Cucumber and radish salad with dill was a crisp, refreshing cold salad that became a favorite in the 1960s for its vibrant flavors and ease of preparation. Thinly sliced cucumbers and radishes were tossed with fresh dill and dressed lightly with vinegar, sugar, and sometimes a touch of sour cream or mayonnaise. This combination created a balance of cool, peppery, and herbal notes that complemented summer meals and barbecues beautifully. Served chilled, this salad was a quick 10-minute recipe that added brightness and texture to the dinner table, providing a healthy vegetable side with minimal fuss. Its simplicity and fresh ingredients reflected the era's growing appreciation for quick, garden-fresh dishes that could be prepared without lengthy cooking. Though less common today, cucumber and radish salad with dill remains a nostalgic and tasty example of mid-century cold vegetable salads designed to refresh and complement heartier foods. Baked bean and hot dog bake turned two of the cheapest grocery staples into something both kids and adults could not wait to eat. Large cans of baked beans were stirred together with sliced hot dogs and baked until the mixture was bubbling and thick, filling the kitchen with a sweet, smoky aroma. A topping of breadcrumbs or shredded cheese was sometimes added if the budget allowed, turning it into something even more special. The natural sweetness of the beans balanced perfectly with the salty smokiness of the hot dogs, making it taste indulgent even though it cost very little to prepare. This was the kind of dish you could bring to a school potluck, a church supper, or a casual weeknight dinner and know it would be gone in minutes. Some cooks tossed in chopped onions, peppers, or even a splash of mustard for extra tang, while others kept it simple for the pickiest eaters. Served alongside cornbread or a crisp green salad, it was a complete, satisfying meal that embodied the thrifty yet crowd-pleasing spirit of 1970s home cooking. Scalloped onions might sound unusual now, but in the 1950s, they were considered an affordable delicacy. The recipe involved slicing onions thinly and baking them in a cream or milk sauce until tender. Topped with breadcrumbs, the dish developed a golden crust that contrasted with the sweet, mellow onions beneath. This was a way to elevate one of the cheapest vegetables into something rich and satisfying. Families often served scalloped onions as a side dish for Sunday dinners, where it added variety to otherwise plain meals. Onions were plentiful, inexpensive, and easy to store, making them a smart choice for budget-conscious households. Baked in cream, they transformed into a dish that felt far more indulgent than its cost suggested. While few people make scalloped onions today, at the time they were celebrated in church cookbooks and women's magazines as a thrifty yet elegant option. They stand as a reminder of how creative cooks turned basics into memorable dinners. Zucchini tomato layer. Bake turned overflowing summer gardens into a warm and colorful family meal that fit any budget. Thin slices of zucchini were alternated with canned tomatoes inside a buttered casserole dish, sprinkled lightly with breadcrumbs and a handful of grated cheese. As it baked, the vegetables released their juices, blending with the cheese to create a savory sauce that required no extra effort. This dish became a staple during peak harvest months, when zucchini was plentiful and nearly free from backyard gardens or neighborhood swaps. Home cooks appreciated how easily it adapted to what they had on hand, allowing the addition of fresh herbs or a scattering of leftover rice to make it more filling. Served hot with crusty bread, it offered a complete vegetarian supper that satisfied even the most dedicated meat eaters. The simple preparation, bright flavors, and low cost made it a dependable recipe that graced countless 1960s dinner tables, celebrating the abundance of late summer produce while keeping grocery bills comfortably low for hardworking families. Pimento cheese spread stood as a creamy, flavorful favorite that doubled as a dip or sandwich filling and became iconic in Southern kitchens. This spread combined sharp cheddar cheese with mayonnaise and diced pimentos, creating a smooth yet tangy mixture that brought vibrant color and taste to simple dishes. Pimento cheese's appeal was rooted in its versatility and ease of preparation, making it a go-to for quick snacks, party platters, and picnic fare. Families cherished this recipe for its comforting richness and ability to elevate basic ingredients. It was also budget-friendly, relying on readily available pantry staples to produce a satisfying result. The spread became a cultural staple, symbolizing Southern hospitality and home cooking traditions. Its creamy texture and bright flavor offered a delicious contrast to crackers, bread, or raw vegetables. Pimento cheese spread remains a beloved classic that reflects the warmth and resourcefulness of mid-20th century American kitchens. Cream cheese and pineapple spread was a sweet and tangy cold appetizer popular in the 1960s, combining smooth cream cheese with crushed canned pineapple for a luscious and easy-to-make spread. This recipe required no cooking and could be whipped up in minutes by folding pineapple into softened cream cheese, sometimes with a touch of sugar or coconut for extra flavor. Served chilled on crackers, celery sticks, or as a sandwich filling, the spread offered a perfect balance of creamy richness and fruity sweetness that delighted guests at parties and family gatherings. Its popularity reflected the era's love for combining convenience foods with bold, contrasting flavors that were both indulgent and approachable. Cream cheese and pineapple spread became a staple of mid-century entertaining due to its simplicity, taste, and visual appeal. While tastes have evolved, this spread remains a nostalgic favorite for those who appreciate quick, retro recipes that transform everyday ingredients into delicious treats. Shredded chicken sandwiches with barbecue sauce were an ideal way to make a small amount of poultry go a long way. By slow-cooking chicken with onions and a tangy sweet homemade barbecue sauce, cooks could create a flavorful filling that was both tender and juicy. The chicken could be pulled apart easily, stretching it across multiple soft rolls to feed a family or a group of guests. These sandwiches were often served at casual gatherings, potlucks, or weeknight dinners when something easy but crowd-pleasing was needed. The sauce soaked into the bread just enough to make each bite flavorful without being messy. This dish fit right into the 1970s style of making do with what you had and turning it into something memorable. Even with modest ingredients, it delivered comfort and a sense of abundance. Mock turkey loaf was one of the cleverest illusions to come out of 1950s kitchens. Real turkey was expensive and reserved for holidays, but ground pork or veal could be seasoned and shaped to resemble a miniature roast bird. Families would mix breadcrumbs, onions, herbs, and eggs into the meat before baking it in a loaf pan. Sometimes it was brushed with a glaze to give it a shiny, festive look. On the table, it was sliced like roast turkey, letting families enjoy the ritual of carving even if they could not afford the real thing. Children rarely knew the difference, and parents took pride in pulling off the illusion. This dish represented more than thrift. It was about creating dignity at the dinner table. Even in lean years, families could enjoy a holiday-style meal in the middle of the week. It was practical, flavorful, and gave everyone a sense of celebration without the expense. Celery and cheese soufflé brought elegance to an inexpensive vegetable that most people considered only a snack or soup ingredient. Finely chopped celery was sautéed with a bit of butter and folded into a fluffy base of beaten eggs and grated cheese before being baked until the top rose and browned. Despite its sophisticated appearance, the ingredients were simple and affordable, making it a popular choice for dinner parties on a budget. The soufflé delivered a gentle crunch from the celery against the airy texture of the eggs, surprising guests who expected something plain. Because the recipe relied on pantry staples like milk, eggs, and a small amount of cheese, it fit perfectly into the frugal cooking philosophy of the time. Home cooks loved that it felt fancy without requiring costly ingredients or specialized equipment. Served with a crisp salad or a slice of toasted bread, this dish turned an ordinary evening into a special occasion and demonstrated how a humble vegetable could take center stage in a memorable meal. Turkey and cranberry wraps were a clever and quick lunch idea that made excellent use of holiday leftovers in mid-century America. This recipe wrapped slices of leftover roasted turkey with a spread of sweet cranberry sauce inside soft tortillas or flatbreads. It offered a perfect balance between savory and sweet, combining the hearty flavors of turkey with the bright tartness of cranberries. Turkey and cranberry wraps were appreciated for their speed of assembly and portability, making them ideal for packed lunches or light dinners. The dish reflected the era's emphasis on practicality and frugality, encouraging cooks to creatively reuse festive ingredients. Its fresh, vibrant taste made it appealing beyond the holiday season, extending its presence in everyday meals. This recipe highlighted how simple ingredients could be transformed into satisfying, flavorful options that fit the busy pace of post-war life. Turkey and cranberry wraps continue to evoke the warmth and resourcefulness of classic American cooking traditions. Bacon and egg salad wraps were a savory and filling cold dish popular in mid-century America, combining chopped crispy bacon and hard-boiled eggs with creamy mayonnaise, then wrapped in fresh lettuce leaves. This recipe provided a tasty, portable meal or appetizer that fit perfectly into the 10-minute preparation window many home cooks sought. The smoky richness of the bacon blended harmoniously with the soft, protein-packed eggs, while the mayonnaise added moisture and a mild tang. Wrapping the mixture in cool, crisp lettuce offered a fresh, crunchy contrast to the creamy filling, making the dish both satisfying and light. Bacon and egg salad wraps were especially popular for casual lunches, picnics, and cocktail parties, offering an easy-to-eat finger food option that was visually appealing and flavorful. This dish reflected the 1960s focus on quick, convenient meals that still felt special and satisfying. Though modern wraps have diversified widely, these simple bacon and egg salad wraps remain a delicious reminder of the era's inventive yet straightforward approach to fast cooking and social dining. Cabbage roll casserole took all the flavors of traditional stuffed cabbage and turned them into an easy, budget-friendly bake. Instead of painstakingly rolling each cabbage leaf around the filling, chopped cabbage was layered with a seasoned mixture of rice, tomato sauce, and ground beef in a large casserole dish. This shortcut saved precious time, while still delivering the same comforting blend of sweet cabbage and tangy tomato that people loved. It was an affordable way to feed a family because the rice and cabbage made up most of the volume, allowing a small amount of meat to go a long way. As the casserole baked slowly, the flavors melded beautifully, and the cabbage softened until it was tender and sweet. Leftovers were just as good, sometimes even better the next day, making it a smart choice for tight weekly meal plans. Every family had its own spin, often seasoning with paprika, garlic, or fresh herbs from the garden. In many homes, this dish represented a perfect marriage of tradition and practicality, proving that with creativity, even the simplest pantry ingredients could deliver a meal that wrapped you in comfort after a long day. Cornmeal mush with syrup was a Depression holdover that stuck around into the 1950s, especially in rural and working-class homes. Cornmeal was still one of the cheapest ingredients you could buy, and families boiled it into a porridge before chilling it until firm. Once cooled, it was sliced and fried in a pan until crisp on the outside. Served hot, the slices were drizzled with molasses or cane syrup, creating a sweet and savory combination that satisfied both hunger and cravings. Many children grew up with this dish as either breakfast or supper when money was tight. It was a way to turn very little into something hearty and comforting. The frying gave it a texture that plain porridge lacked, and the syrup was a treat in itself. Cornmeal mush carried a sense of tradition and resourcefulness, proving that even the simplest ingredients could make a memorable meal. It was humble, yes, but it was also genuinely loved at many family tables. Savory oatmeal bake proved that oats could be far more than a breakfast cereal, and that inexpensive pantry staples could hold their own at supper time. Rolled oats were mixed with diced onions, shredded cheese, beaten eggs, and a dash of black pepper, then baked until the top formed a golden crust. The result was a hearty loaf with a texture similar to meatloaf, but without the expense of beef. This dish allowed families to stretch their budgets while still offering a warm and filling dinner that paired well with a simple green salad or sliced tomatoes from the backyard garden. Cooks loved that the recipe welcomed additions like leftover vegetables or small bits of ham, making it an adaptable way to clear the refrigerator. Children often enjoyed the mild, nutty flavor, and leftovers could be sliced and reheated for breakfast the next morning. It embodied the frugal creativity of 1960s kitchens, where a bag of oats and a little cheese could become a main course worth serving to guests without apology. Quick slaw with vinegar dressing was a tangy and no mayonnaise coleslaw variant that became popular for its simplicity and refreshing taste. This salad featured shredded cabbage and carrots tossed with a vinegar-based dressing made from vinegar, sugar, oil, and seasonings, offering a lighter alternative to traditional creamy slaws. Quick slaw with vinegar dressing was appreciated for how fast it could be prepared, requiring no lengthy chilling or mixing of heavy ingredients. Its crisp, tangy flavor made it a favorite side dish for barbecues, picnics, and casual meals during the mid-20th century. This version of slaw fit well within the era's culinary trends, favoring easy-to-make, health-conscious dishes that complemented grilled or fried main courses. The recipe's reliance on pantry staples and fresh produce made it accessible to home cooks seeking quick, flavorful accompaniments. Quick slaw with vinegar dressing remains a nostalgic favorite that highlights mid-century America's practical approach to salads. Potato hot dish was a true Midwestern invention that became an icon of thrifty 1950s cooking. It layered sliced potatoes with ground beef, onions, and cream of mushroom soup, baking everything until it was tender and bubbling. The result was a casserole that tasted far richer than its humble ingredients suggested. Midwestern families embraced this meal because it stretched small amounts of meat into something hearty enough to fill everyone at the table. Canned soup became the secret weapon, acting as both sauce and seasoning, which was a new trend in American kitchens at the time. Leftover vegetables or even canned corn were often added to bulk it out further. Hot dish could be served straight from the oven to the table, making cleanup easy and feeding several mouths at once. For church suppers, potlucks, and weekday dinners alike, potato hot dish represented comfort and frugality hand in hand. Its reputation lasted well beyond the 1950s, remembered as one of the defining casseroles of its time. Which of these dirt-cheap Thanksgiving recipes would you bring back to your table? Drop your choice in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe so we can keep uncovering more forgotten food history together.